All right. Here is a big question. When is it time to give up? Is it time to give up on the 9-point Kickstarter? No, there's still 4 days left. We could maybe do it. So if you like all the art drawn here, consider backing, or it is going to be over and I will have to give up. But you don't have to give up, not necessarily. We're going to talk about when is it a good time to give up on comics, all right? So when is it time to shelve your work and switch to something else? Comics take a lot of work, which means, and because of this, it kind of is difficult to say when it is a good time to give up. Because on one side of the coin, even if it's a great idea that'll make you happy, sometimes comics are gonna make you miserable from time to time. Like, that's just something they like to do to you. It's just kind of a thing. If you keep in mind my advice from every video and work on a small comic, you can save yourself a lot of future pain. Just saying, but, none of us are gonna follow that because we all think we're special and we're all creative types who have all these big ideas that take over our brain. Anyways, okay, with that out of the way, let's say you are in the thick of it. It doesn't matter how deep you are into the process, whether it be thumbnails, the script, you're 10 pages away from the end. What are some good reasons to give up and what are some bad reasons to give up? First and foremost, your health, both physical and mental, should always come before your comic. If it's hurting you, you have no obligation to continue. Don't do it. Whether that is for a day or forever, it's a perfectly good reason to drop your comic if it is actually physically, emotionally, mentally scarring you. Okay? Never feel guilty about dropping a comic for those reasons. Second, if you have absolutely no interest in a comic anymore, like sometimes you work on something for years and years and you just can't get excited about it anymore. You've done all the sort of tips, you've tried to reinvigorate your passions, and it just kind of makes you sad and bored and you want to do other things. It's fine. You can drop it. Like, I give you the permission to move aside and work on something else. Like, it may suck for the readers. I know we've all been in the position where our favorite story stops. But if you can't get the excitement to do it and it just makes you sad, it's fine to quit. I think the most important thing to realize about dropping your comic is that comics should be fun. You should enjoy your time doing them. Comics shouldn't become an obligation for you. They're something you do because you like them, because they give you joy, and you do them for yourself, for your own creative fulfillment. Unless, of course, you're being paid to do it, in which case, sometimes we have publishing agreements and all that crap. But that being said, your focus should be on your enjoyment. And if you're not getting any enjoyment, you have no obligation to complete them. Like, remember this, that canceled TV shows, they are still some of people's favorite shows, even if they do not have an end. And sometimes people watch a show end and they hate the ending, and they probably would have liked the show way, way more if it just had never ended, and then they could have made up their own endings. Sometimes us as readers never know what we actually want out of a show, and that's fine, and it's okay to drop your comic. It's okay. If your life will be better without it, do it. Don't feel bad about it. You might need to pop off of the internet for a bit because sometimes people are rude. But for the most part, I've seen people who have dropped their comics have a perfectly fine time, except for a few exceptions. So now on the opposite side of the coin. Okay, what are some reasons that you shouldn't give up? Well, the main difference between a good reason and a bad reason is time, usually. Small moments of doubt and comic blues are bound to happen. We all want to go back and remake the first pages of our story, but it's worth it to just push through for the most part. But if it's repetitive and constant and it's draining, that's when you need to start thinking about your relationship with your work. Try not to build up guilt around completing your comic. These feelings kind of will swell and create larger and larger art blocks for you. And when it comes to finishing your comic, you don't want that. You don't want to feel guilty about your output. Again, ultimately, comics are free. For first and foremost, they're for your joy. That's what matters the most. And one reason to stop that is universally silly. Okay, universally, it's always silly in my opinion, is not being talented enough. Okay, you don't need to be an expert artist to have a comic. You don't need to quit because you're not good enough. You don't need to have any amount of art skill or writing skill to make a comic, because again, comics are about making you happy. And if drawing doesn't make you happy, like drawing doesn't really make me happy, especially like pressurized drawing, like if that doesn't make you happy, that's one thing. But if you really like to do art and you really like to make comics and you're really worried about what people would think of you, you feel that you're not good enough, you feel like no one could ever like your comic, like don't worry about that stuff. If being in the public eye is something you don't want for yourself, you don't need to do that. You can make comics for yourself quietly in your own little world. That's fine. You don't have to show people your comics. But for the most part, your art's good enough, okay? You don't need the best art in the world to make comics. You just need to be happy while you do it. And a comic is also a really great way to practice. Like, study on the side and use your comic to keep practicing and keep learning. All of our comics are continually getting more and more better, okay? They get better and better. Ursula improves as an artist, I improve as a writer. And there ain't no time to go back. There isn't time to like constantly doubt yourself. Just have fun and make comics. There's nothing wrong with making a comic that you look back on later and you cringe a whole bunch, as long as you're cringing with a bit of pride and love, because man, you challenged yourself and you had fun and you had focus, and having fun and making a comic is just a nice way to spend your life. And doubting yourself constantly and never giving yourself a chance to learn, that's not cool. So that's my advice on whether to give up or not, is whether it's pretty simple. It comes down to, are you going to be happy in the long run if you quit, or are you not? And that's what you got to think of. I don't know if this is good advice or not. It's a Sunday video, so I get to not make a great point because no one watches these. Thank you for watching, the one person that I just called no one. You're not no one. You're special, and so is your comic. Love you. Okay, goodbye.